This is episode 257 of the Focused Mindset Podcast. Right now, let's level up our mindset so we can be solution focused. Let's go. Hello. I've been thinking a lot about all of the things that I've done in this last year. Does that ever happen to you where you get in this real reflective mood and you're like, what are some of the things that might be something that's helpful to others? One subject that came up a lot in this last year in California is that our state seemed to be going through turmoil. We had fires, and then we had a lot of things going on with like ice and the fears of kids being separated from their parents possibly. And then shortly after that, we had things happening with the Middle East. Oh, and then all of the highlights that happened in California in general, where we were in the news more often. And it became a lot. And as you can imagine, as school counselors, we were hit. And I think that a lot of us didn't even really process it. It's not like we talked about it in the moment. Why? Because we're just all busy doing our job. We're all busy with our population of our school, and we are serving. And so it isn't until now when I'm looking back on the academic school year when I think about all of those things happening in the same year. In my community, of course, I know my demographics, and it happens to be that we have about 50% that are Hispanic, and then there's 40% that is Asian from all the different areas of the Middle East. It's amazing. One time we did a little fun activity where we took all the kids and asked them about all the different languages they spoke and the places they were from. I think we had 19 different languages represented that each had quite a bit of kids that were in it. It is amazing the type of diversity. I just had to do my demographics recently. That's just the way this school demographics is broken down. It's crazy because every school that I've worked at has been so dramatically different. And it's always really important to be in tune with those demographics. Why? Because those are the families that you are serving. You need to be able to be in tune with them. You need to understand them. When I was in another area of California, in Moreno Valley, there was in my very first teaching job, I'll never forget it. I was the only white person with all of the other kids being Black. Then I had a mother come up to me like that first day, and she was just like not okay with the situation. And she came up and said, I want to know how are you qualified to teach my baby? And what do you know about teaching my babies? She was talking about my age, but also I felt kind of maybe a little bit about my race. And she was just I just remember being kind of scared and freaked out by this mom. But I also felt as though I was going to prove to her that I was absolutely capable of teaching, and I was, going to be teaching her babies well. And I talk about this actually in the very first podcast that I ever did, where I was so deliberate and being so young. I mean, I started teaching in my early 20s. I was just like, okay, I'm going to sing songs and I'm going to make sure those kids know the songs and make sure that they get the worksheets home. No matter what I did, it was just glares and attitude from this mother. And then finally, halfway through the year, we had like this whole thing that we were doing where were reading books from different cultures. And there was one book, one of my favorite books called Elizabethy's Doll. And I was like, I really want to ask this mom to read this book. She's so in tune with her kids. I think she would do wonderful, but it was just so intimidating. I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am like young 20s being like, I can't ask her, I don't even know if she likes me, and I went ahead and asked her. And when she came in and read the book, she was like in full character, like as if she really was in that book that was about a very small community of people who couldn't afford toys and dolls. And so Elizabethy's Doll was a doll that this girl made out of, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. I think it was a rock. And she was trying to kind of like be like her mom, who also had a little baby and is the whole story behind that. And she told the story amazingly. And the kids were just on pins and needles. And she even had like a little accent that she pulled out. And I was like, where did that come from? And I just said, that was amazing. And before you know it, she started helping in the classroom. We started talking. I got to know her story with her two kids, which I didn't even know she had adopted. And it wasn't long before she was a regular in my class, and she was taking my long white girl hair. And in the morning, she would say, "Oh, it is way too hot in here. I need to braid your hair." And I would sit down in the little tiny chairs that were in my classroom, and she would braid my hair into these amazing braids that I miss to this day, to be honest. And I learned a lesson. I learned about connection. I learned about meeting people where they were at. And it's not about proving anything to them. It's about the connection that you build, and that people can always see eye to eye about things, no matter the color of their skin, no matter the situation they're going through or their religion or anything. And that lesson has served me so well as a school counselor, because I walk into each school environment that I've been in, and yes, I do the demographics. And then I'm able to say, okay, what do I want to learn? What do I want to learn about these people that are in this community? And how can I see things through their worldview and help us both see eye to eye and have a humble conversation in spite of the differences that might seem so glaringly obvious between whatever it is that's different. In my school, um, it's been quite a long while since that original story that I shared with you. And it might come a little more natural, I'll say, because it's been years, but it was so important to just tune in this year. Tune in to where they were in those moments and understand humbly that no, I can't understand what it feels like to go to bed and be concerned because you're seeing on the news that ICE is raiding places and you're thinking, what's going to happen to my family? I remember particularly in the early part of 2025 when I was counseling a child about grief and loss. And I said, what are some of the things that roll through your mind, that your fears? And she said, oh, no, it wasn't that. Actually, I take that back. She had actually told me about how she was feeling in the hospital when she was visiting the person that then eventually passed away. And she was saying, I was so scared. I'm like, what are you scared of? She said, well, my number one fear and my number one prayer always is that my grandparents get to stay here and that they don't get deported back to Mexico. That's my number one fear and prayer always. And then after that, I prayed for my loved one. And it was just a humbling time. I can remember the feeling in the air. I can remember everything about the look in her eyes, to think that whether or not she was actually in danger or not is not the question. Whether her grandparents were actually in danger ever was not the point. The point was that this is the place that she was living, that she felt like that was the number one thing that she had to pray for, was that her grandparents would be okay. And we all remember, especially those of us that are in California, seeing all the vision, the pictures that they would put up on the news that I just wish they would just stop doing, because it was just freaking out the kids so much. Like there's no way that they can decipher that out. Then I had to step away and say, oh, it's not the news's fault necessarily, although I wish that they could be sheltered. They can't be sheltered. This is the world they live in. This is the conversations that they're having even in their house. And just being in that moment with her. And then knowing that I needed to provide. Now, these are the things that you don't see on applications or that you write out when you're turning in things. But I knew that her and her sisters needed a place to go. And I said, do you have anybody else that you know that actually worries about this as well? And she says, oh, yeah, we talk about it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to open up my door at recess on Wednesdays. You can invite them in and we can talk about that. And you guys can talk about that, just a time when you guys can be together. And she would bring people and we would just have a moment of just saying the reality of what's happening. And it was the way that I could reach out and serve the people that are in my community, the students that are thinking about that, and they can breathe and relax. Now, later in that year, Well, actually, this is just something that has come up for the last quite a few years. We have so many kids that celebrate Ramadan. And those of you that know, Ramadan is a holiday where families will not eat, they will fast from sunrise to sunset for a period of time. And some kids choose to celebrate with their parents and some kids don't because they're young. But the kids that do, they have to sit there at lunchtime with all the other kids eating. They have to watch them and smell all the foods. And one of my what we call steps aide, she celebrates Ramadan, and she's coming up to me and she's like, "How about we do something about this?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And she went and kind of like mentioned that we should have a space where they can hang out during lunch so they don't have to smell all the food and everything like that. And that has been one small, subtle way that has allowed that entire community of Muslims that celebrate Ramadan to be able to say, wow, they see us, they understand us, they meet us where we're at. And that little group of older elementary kids mostly that would come in, we opened the library and we would just chat and laugh and talk and let the time fly by when all the kids were eating, and then they would be able to play. Some of them would choose to stay in there anyways. And I built such wonderful connections. And then later on, when I met parents, they're thankful. Thank you that the school does this. Thank you to the principal for allowing this. And not a single one of the people in leadership celebrate Ramadan, but they understand that that is a small thing that we can do to meet them where they're at. And so many moments of time where that would open up a conversation to help them understand that being there and present with the population of students that are at your particular school in your particular community around you is so important. It's about being present. It's about being connected. And that goes so far. And so when people are saying, how do you deal with equity and access? But I find that counselors that really have this down pat are counselors that are plugged in to, they know their demographics, but more than that, they know the people. It's not just the numbers on the paper. It's the needs that they have. It's looking in their eyes. It's talking to the actual parents. It's sitting down and listening to them. A conversation that I'm thinking of right now when a parent called me and she said, I'm scared that part of the reason why my daughter is having social problems on the playground is maybe they are worried about the fact that she's different from them because she's Muslim and they're not. You can just picture her at night, before she goes to bed with her worries being like, oh, I hope my daughter's not going through being made fun of. And it's like, there's where we meet. We all go through that as parents. We all feel those moments of, I hope my child isn't being picked out for things that may be different or aren't being targeted for how they believe. And then we meet that moment of connection. It absolutely is the time when you understand real equity and real service to every person on your campus, community, your workplace, wherever you are. And also just I want to use the word fellowship that begins to happen with people that are different from you, but so much the same as well. And you find out, wow, is it actually possible that we forget that we're more the same than different in our hearts? We are aligned in so many different ways. Like in the last podcast, we talked about alignment. There's alignment that sometimes is just so different because maybe we're using a little bit different language. Then you boil it down. That feeling of fear is the same. And that is really what I believe we need to, that I learned from this particular year when I was kind of like going through all of it. I really learned it. That's what we can move forward with. It's not only in California, it's all over the place. Find the places we align, find the places that we have similarities, and then really genuinely and humbly serve the people that are in your community with a different level of understanding, knowing that, no, you haven't walked in their shoes, but you can put yourself in that spot, if you will, because of the genuine caring that you have. So I hope that you can do that with people today. There's someone in your life that you've been thinking, but I feel this way, and this is the way I feel, and I need to be heard. Step away from that ledge and say, I want to know how they feel. I really want to see where they're coming from, and then see how it makes a difference, because trust me, it will. It's time for me to get going. So until next time, live solution focused. Bye.